What's going on, everybody? Dylan Manfield on hand for the Sport Profile. I'm so excited to be joined by Jon Mozes, a good friend of mine, a Rider professor, and the play-by-play announcer for Rider women's basketball at Princeton women's basketball, the Trenton Thunder. The list goes on and on. How are you holding up through all this?
I am surviving. Every day is the same, and it's all staying inside and avoiding other human beings. It's a weird time.
Does it feel like, I've been asking this to, some of the other people, but does it feel like you should be somewhere else? And not in your home right now?
I mean, I should. Oh my God! Like, I should be at Arm & Hammer Park right now, like finishing off lunch and getting ready for another home game. What's today? Thursday the 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd be starting a homestand. We'd be starting a 4-gamer this weekend.
So you'd be starting a 4-game homestand, and you're like in your living room or your kitchen, wherever.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I was texting with my boss on Sunday afternoon. It was very nice out, and I was just sort of daydreaming about doing a game at 4:00 in the afternoon. The sun was out, and I was just sitting in my living room looking out the window, and we exchanged messages, and he was like, "Yeah, beautiful day for a game. Shame we would have been on the road." And I'm like, "Well, it would have been in Erie. I'd have been looking at like a 3-hour bus ride to Akron tonight. Like,
hey."
Whatever.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
Yeah. But now would you take that bus ride over being here right now?
100%. I mean, I would much rather be doing a game than doing anything else. Like,
yeah.
I have spent my entire professional life building, a schedule in which I do 200 events a year, 365 days. So yeah, I mean, it is very weird to not be on a microphone since March 5th for me, which would have been the Rider Women's Senior Day.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Were you at the MAC tournament at all in Atlantic City or no?
No, I was not. But I'm pretty close with Daryl Fine, who does the Rider Men, and he was down there doing a game. I think he did the first game that day.
Yeah, I believe so.
Before they shut it all down.
Yeah, I was there for the final game where they had shut it all down too, and it was just the atmosphere was all so weird.
Right.
So I'm wondering, like, what was your reaction, when you're seeing all of these, leagues cancel? Like, at what point did you think that your season was going to be in jeopardy for the Trenton Thunder?
Certainly far before minor league baseball announced that the season would start in a delay, which I think was March 12th or 13th, would have been the day after Rudy Gobert tested positive.
Yeah.
I follow a lot of different people on Twitter, and these stories about the coronavirus had just sort of been on the radar for more than a month at that point. And I wouldn't say that there was a specific day where I was like, oh yeah, the season's not going to happen. But the Center for Disease Control sent out guidance that said, we recommend no gatherings over, 500 people or whatever it is. And I was like, well, how in the world are you going to have a minor league baseball game then? Between both the teams and the support staff, that's like 100 people or 50, 75-ish people
in and of itself
right there. Yeah. And then you start talking about like grounds crew and staff to secure the games and ushers and then fans. I mean, forget it. Like, this wasn't it was not in the cards for a little until that until the NBA made their suspension, until Rudy Gobert tested positive. I mean, I think we're going to look back on that moment years from now and say, Rudy Gobert probably saved a lot of lives by testing positive for this virus. I mean, as sad as it is, and I'm glad he recovered, and other members of the NBA teams that were involved, didn't test positive. This could have continued to spread unknowingly at sporting events for weeks until an athlete tested positive.
Yeah. So, what was your initial reaction like when your season was canceled? I mean, it doesn't sound like you were surprised.
Yeah. I had a sense of inevitability that it was coming. That in some way, whether they cancel the first 2 months of the season, restart us in June or July, and then maybe they add some games in September. I had a sense I just had a feeling that it was coming. But of course, it was disappointing. I'm a member of the full-time staff for the Thunder, and we bust our humps from October 1st until March 25th or March 30th, until opening day to make sure that everything's in place, and we had really put in a lot of great effort throughout this offseason, and we'd achieved some goals and we were on track to achieve some others. And, there was just this momentary dread of all of this work that we put in over the last couple of months, would not come to fruition. That was like really disappointing, and I think affected all of us for a couple days there. And still, I feel that disappointment today. Now
Yeah.
2 months later.
Yeah. Do you know anybody who has had the virus or has recovered from it? How close to home has it hit for you, if you don't mind me asking?
Pretty close. I've got a lot of family in New York, Westchester, and out on Long
Really?
Island. Where some of the first major outbreaks were. I have a cousin on my dad's side who was in the hospital
Oh, wow.
on Long Island with the virus. He was on a ventilator.
Oh,
He did about 11 days in the hospital, about 4 days on the ventilator, and the things that I read say that
yeah.
overwhelmingly people that go onto onto ventilators don't come back. And this was before I sort of was aware of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, a cousin of mine had it for a little while and has recovered, and I'm thrilled
Good.
for that. And then I
Good.
have other cousins in Westchester, New York, who were right near the initial outbreak
Mhm.
from the Orthodox synagogue in New Rochelle, New York.
Yeah.
Um, and at first I was reading about it and I had to double check myself. Is that my family's congregation? I've been to their bar and bat mitzvah there.
Yeah.
So that was like a pretty scary moment. Turned out one of my cousins, who was really not feeling well when this was all happening. Turns out she has mono,
Okay.
which
It's not
is
COVID, but
still sort of a hard
of
thing to
course,
deal with.
of course.
And it's funny because I talked to her recently and she said, she's studying to be a physical therapist. And she said, I would have
Really.
had to withdraw from school. I wouldn't have been able to attend classes. And, she's like, now I can just do everything remote because everybody's remote. And,
Yeah.
I have to be home for 2-3 months to recover from this anyway. And everybody's home. Like my parents are working from home.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think I'm fortunate that I don't know anybody that's passed. And
Yeah,
I
thank
hope I
God
don't.
for that. So, how have you been, I guess, utilizing your time? Since you're not at the ballpark, getting ready for that 4-game homestand you told me earlier. How have you been utilizing your time?
I've been reading a lot more, which is something that I've tried to bring more into my life or back into my life in the last 2-3 years. So I just finished Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog, which was a trip through the origins of Nike, which I
Mhm.
found really interesting. I thought it was very well written. Um, it's also given me a chance to go back and watch games again from this
Yeah.
past academic year. Basketball games, creating a new demo. I mean, it's still an opportunity to network with people and reach out to people. And, we're all in the same boat. Hope you're doing well is sort of a nice and easy icebreaker to,
Yeah.
talk to people that you might not normally. Um, and, between so I've tried to segment some time each day to do some broadcast work, some reading, watching some good television shows. I just finished the new season of Westworld, which I
Okay.
thought was pretty entertaining. But it's hard. It's not easy waking up the same day every day with nowhere to go.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely you feel like, what's the word, like maybe they're just like pigeonholed into your house or your space or whatever it may be. So talk about like how, I guess, you got your start into play by play and broadcasting. About it really makes you tick?
I wanted to keep playing sports when I finished high school.
Mhm.
I went to the University of New Haven, which I was attracted to their management of sports industries program. I liked that it was housed in the business school, so it sort of gave you it sort of gave me a background in how a sports business runs,
Sure.
which is another area I was sort of always interested in. You know, right before classes started my freshman year, I had reached out to the baseball coach and said, I'd love a chance to meet you and just sort of pick your brain about things. And I said to him, is there a path for me to walk onto the team? They're Division II, and I didn't have any expectation. He was like,
Yeah.
We actually do have 3 or 4 preferred walk-ons coming on this fall. And he's like, that's not the case every year. But look, if you want to come to practice and if you want to, sit on a bucket and soak some knowledge and just sort of hang around, we're open to that. And, I did that for a little while. But, I was also sort of feeding emails from, because when you show up on campus as a new student, all of a sudden you're getting emails from every club and every department on campus that wants students to be involved with things.
Yep.
But lo and behold, one came from athletics looking for public address announcers. And I walked into the office. This would have been my second week on campus, met the sports information director. And the athletics offices at the time at New Haven didn't have, full office walls. They were just, essentially tall cubicles that, went, as if it was, but you could hear conversations in neighboring offices. If you look. And I was talking away with Andy Beardsley, the SID, for probably 20 minutes or so. And his office neighbor shouted over the wall, "Andy, sign him up. He's the guy. Give him the PA job for volleyball."
Really?
Yeah. So I ended up that fall doing a lot of public address. Yeah. I mean, from an athletic department perspective, student work is great. You get hands-on experience. You don't have to pay a professional to be the public address announcer. And, it was a great situation. New Haven women's volleyball was really, really good. And to this day, they still are.
Yeah.
Just joined a new conference, the Northeast 10, and they didn't lose a set at home all season. Every game was an hour.
What season was that?
This would have been the fall of 2008. And in my 4 years there, I ended up doing public address for volleyball, home basketball games, and then lacrosse, a little bit of soccer. And they hosted the NCAA tournament, the NCAA regional twice. They hosted the NE10 tournament, I think 3 out of the 4 years that I was there. I actually went back at the year after I graduated and did public address for the regional they hosted the next year.
Really?
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of public address, and I'd never really watched volleyball before. So it was a great education to learn the game.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, and then also during the fall of my freshman year, the RA in my building was the program director for the radio station.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he stopped me one day. He was like, he just stopped me and he was like, I've heard you talk in sports. You seem to know what you're talking about. Women's basketball has their home opener on Sunday, and I need a color guy. Are you here? And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. And I did his color for I think maybe the first 3 or 4 home games that year, and then I ended up doing public address the rest of the year. And then that spring, I started to get involved more at the radio station, and they carried the games for baseball, and I did every game my freshman year. So I ended up a 4-year experience at New Haven where I think I saw just about every home athletic event.
Really?
Volleyball, I was at every home game. Basketball, I was at every home game except for maybe 1 or 2 over the years. And then my sophomore, junior, and senior years, I traveled with men's and women's basketball to do radio. So it worked out really nicely. In Division II, they play a lot of doubleheaders where both teams travel together on one bus, and then they play 1:30, 3:30. During, say the women play first, the men will go and have their pregame meal, and then they flip-flop. So I was doing games at Adelphi University and Pace, and went up to Assumption, which I really loved, that up in Springfield, Massachusetts. Went up to Franklin Pierce once. We went to Lemoyne once on the overnight. That was cool, up in Syracuse.
Oh, wow.
That was a great experience. So, I did a lot of games in college, basically just by being me.
Yeah.
And found my way. They found me, I found them, and it ended up being a great experience.
How are you able to, I guess, learn so many new sports? I mean, like I'm sure like you do like the rules of like, football, basketball, etc. But like for some sports like volleyball, like that you said you didn't have as much experience with, how were you able to, I guess, consume the knowledge of the sport so you can sound intelligent while you're doing a broadcast?
Yeah. The The interesting one about volleyball was that, it's been a long-term tradition at the University of New Haven to have an
Mm,
excellent volleyball team. Their athletic director at the time, Debbie Chin, was the longtime women's volleyball coach before she accepted the athletic director role.
yeah.
Um, so they had been an outstanding program at the Division II level for years and years and years. And I remember pretty vividly fall of my freshman year, I think it would have been before the conference tournament that year that they ended up hosting. Debbie Chin sat next to me for a match, and I just sort of picked her brain, and she was asking me, do you want to keep doing this? Are you enjoying it? And I'm like, yeah, but what is that? Like, what does this rule mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
I, what's the rotation pattern like? And, why is this sub happen? Why can the libero just come on and off whenever? Um, that was stuff that seemed very strange to me. I'm used to some sports that you can sub on the fly, like
Yeah.
lacrosse. I was familiar with growing up in the Philadelphia area.
Hmm.
Um, Soccer, you could sub, but the game would stop. Basketball, the game stops when you sub.
Yeah.
But it was so strange to me that in volleyball, the libero could just cycle on and off whenever it was to the team's advantage, which was very interesting to me.
Is volleyball one of like maybe a sport that you have always had an interest in because it was the first one that you, I guess, started doing?
Um, yeah, I mean, I really didn't know volleyball at all before I got to college.
Yeah.
And then, I watched 4 years of a team that may have lost 3 times at home over my
Wow.
4 years. Yeah, they were really good. And, you get to know some of the athletes because, I'm in classes with some of them.
Yeah.
Um, and, I was pretty excited when I got the opportunity at Princeton now 4 years ago to start to call volleyball for them because I missed it. The game is fast. There is a remarkable amount of athleticism that goes into it. You really have to think quickly. It's almost like a faster paced version of basketball because
Yeah.
players are moving so often, and when you jump to swing and kill the ball down against your opponent, you have to measure where your blockers are coming from, and can you use that blocker hand to your advantage? There's a
Yeah.
lot of strategy not seen
I'm sure.
that I learned a lot about, and still it's entertaining to watch. It's very cool.
I feel the same way, about field hockey a little bit too. Like, coming into college, like I didn't know anything about field hockey. My sister actually played in high school, and I'm like, why are they stopping so much? Like they stop every 2 seconds. And
Yeah.
when I get to college, okay, maybe the stoppage is a little less, but it's still like I love covering field hockey because I think it was my first sport that I had covered there.
Yeah, field hockey is one that I sort of had some trouble with. Even to this day, I have
Yeah,
trouble
no, me too.
following a field hockey game.
Yeah.
um, I didn't play a ton of hockey when I was a kid. I mostly played baseball and basketball.
Hmm.
Um, and my struggle with hockey is that I struggle to watch it on TV. The game is so fast that it's really not made for television. So my interest sort of just migrated to baseball, basketball, and football more than
Hmm.
hockey. People say they're 4 for 4 fans, and sure, I follow the Flyers and, I know the names of some players and that kind of thing. But,
Yeah.
because I didn't have a good basis of knowledge about hockey in general, I really just had trouble getting into field hockey, even though I've called a handful of games over the
Sure.
years.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. Um, so now, being at Princeton and calling games for the Princeton women's basketball team, and for Ryder, you've got to call now games for two WNBA players in Stella Johnson and Bella Alarie. So what's that like, knowing that these two individuals, who you were calling games for, have gone on to, the professional league?
I mean, I will say watching the WNBA draft was pretty surreal, seeing Alarie go 5th overall. I mean,
Yeah.
for an Ivy League player, that's pretty amazing. The Ivy League has had very good basketball players come through over the years. But I think you would struggle to identify somebody that would translate as well to the pro game like Bella. I mean, she's a 6'4" two guard. That is insane in women's game.
Yeah.
From the first game that I watched Bella Alarie, when I started to work into her background a little bit, it was clear that if she wanted it, that she could be a professional basketball player. Her father, Mark Alarie, was an NBA draft pick in the late 1980s. He scored 2,200 points at Duke. I mean, the guy was an excellent basketball player in his day. And then, it's his daughter. So sure, she'll put it together.
Yeah.
With Stella, she obviously came into a program where the team was on the rise anyway. Her freshman year, she was not looked at as a star. I'm sure you've covered the story a little bit that she's not. She was not recruited by a ton of Division I programs. Ryder was sort of the only one that showed serious interest. Yeah. So she built herself into a professional basketball player over 4 years. It was clear from day one that she'd be a very good defensive player, and she contributed to the team that way. But then, during her sophomore year, once Robin Perkins went down with that foot injury late in the year, it felt like Stella needed to do more offensively. And then at the time, she may not have had as many tools in her tool bag or on her belt as she needed to be a leading scorer for a team that was competing for the top of the league. But by the end of her junior year, it was like insane. And then obviously her senior season was amazing. That was clear. She dropped 40 points a couple of times early in the year. I was definitely thinking about that. The first game of this past year was Ryder at Princeton. And,
actually,
selfishly, from a broadcasting perspective, I'm like, hey, this is awesome. I get to prep for both teams that I'm calling all year for game one. This is amazing.
Yeah, that's a great one.
And then, at the same time, you're looking at it and you're like, wow, Stella Johnson is really improved. And, Princeton had an amazing year and probably should have been undefeated. That loss at Iowa, tough one for them. But it was a pretty amazing experience. And, those are two players that I will always say are two of the best women's players I've seen play in person.
Do you have any favorite games that you have called of theirs, whether it be a big performance that either of them had, or just one of your favorite games?
Well, there's two that come to mind this year for Stella. The first one would be the win over Niagara, which was early in the year at home, or early in the conference year at home. They just, the team didn't really have a great energy about them. Niagara was playing well. They played from behind for most of that game. And then the fourth quarter, Stella just sort of put on her backpack and was like, I got this, guys. And, carried them to a win down the stretch.
I remember that one.
McIntyre for Niagara was throwing in threes from half court. That was a pretty incredible game. And, the other one was definitely the win over Manhattan at home, where, Stella hits the hard step back crossover for three, and she hits a deep three earlier in the sequence. I mean, those two games for Stella Johnson, I think really have stuck with me. For Bella Alarie, it's probably some of those games in the Ivy League tournament. Her sophomore year, she was the best player on the court when it was clear that when Penn had the player of the year and they were playing on their home court. Alarie had an 8-block game at some point.
Wow.
Just the accolades that she, and, the individual performances that she put together over 4 years were just insane. There were some games where it was very clear that whenever Princeton stepped on the floor, that they were the better team, even if they played 6 through 12 in their rotation for the whole game, that they'd still be the better team. But they never approached a game that way, and I think that comes from the way that Allery approaches herself, her game. She never lets an opponent do what they want. Her length affects everything. And she's such a remarkable scorer. She set the Ivy League record, I think 45 points in a game at Columbia. And I was texting with Princeton sports information contact throughout that game, just saying, like, are they ever going to double team? What are they doing?
Yeah.
You had a couple games like that where she was putting up 35, 40 points. And
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow. So you talked about, how Bella approaches her game. So how do you approach like your broadcast? Like, what do you want people to, walk away with when, they're listening to you call a game?
I want people to come away with something they don't know before. For say Princeton women's basketball, I think a lot of the audience for many of the games that I call, really whether it's Princeton, Rider, or Trenton Thunder, a lot of the audience is interested parties, right? People that have family or friends that are playing in the game or are connected to the game somehow.
Sure.
So, I spend a lot of my time trying to find stories about players, about coaches, about the game that, are not well known or, that our audience may not be familiar with. I also want them to come away with a smile. I mean, at the end of the day, we're watching sports, but we've got to have some fun.
Of course.
It's a lot easier during a baseball season to sort of get off topic and have a funny conversation with your partner than it is for a basketball season where there's 30 games in all, and the games are 2 hours, 2.5 hours at most. The average baseball game is 2 hours and 45 minutes, and you got to find a way to keep an audience entertained that whole time.
Yeah.
So I would say those are the two main things: something that you don't know, and a smile at some point, or
Definitely.
a laugh.
Sure. What's something that I guess not many people would know about you? Given that you're at all these games. What are some of the things you like to do aside from calling games?
Good question. I have a twin brother. That's unique.
Really? It's definitely something I didn't know.
He is nothing like me. We are not identical. We're fraternal.
Okay.
He is an artist. He was an architecture major at Temple. He does a lot of like spatial planning and audiovisual technology work. He is a lot more talented than I am in some things. For example, for his birthday this year, he asked for a sewing machine before a global pandemic was hitting the United States. And now he is sewing masks for everybody in our family and like mailing them to my cousins.
Wow. Is he like having like, I don't want to say like his own business because I don't know if he's selling them, but he's just having a bunch of fun like making masks.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they're cloth masks, right? So, it's not the N95 top of the line that, healthcare providers desperately need.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kind of thing that can still be effective for you and I, when we go to the grocery store or when we go to CVS. And, he's always sort of had talents with his hands. I mean, he can draw, he can paint, he can write. I mean, in college, we would like spray paint together, on big canvases, not on the side of buildings, don't worry. He's just always sort of had an artistic eye for things that I guess I never really had. I was always more focused on sports.
Yeah. I mean, would you say you were, I guess, for the time being, were you the athlete in the family?
I was definitely the most interested. My older brother played baseball through high school also.
Okay.
We're 4 years apart, so I don't know if he's a better player or not because I guess I never really saw him play much.
Yeah.
I was still in school when he was playing games. So, I definitely played the most sports in growing up out of the three of us.
And it's safe to say now, I feel like you've watched the most sports too.
Oh, I think even at age 18, I watched the most sports out of
Yeah.
all of us.
So what would say is like your best piece of advice for people wanting to go into, this field of sports broadcasting?
It's to get reps, particularly at an early age. A lot of people, when they're starting in their college journey, they don't really know what they're interested in. And frankly, I didn't know what I was interested in this either.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that, the couple hundred games I did, baseball, basketball in college, made a huge difference. That and, sort of inviting a bigger network. You have to network when you do this. That's the only way you find jobs.
Definitely.
Well, it's not the only, but it's the best way to find jobs before there's 400 applications for them.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to find somebody that's willing to mentor you a little bit, give you a little bit of so just as an example, I work with Mark Zumoff, Sixers television voice. And, I connected with him summer after my sophomore year of college. I was doing an internship with the 76ers. And we wandered off from our internship to Doug Collins' introductory press conference.
Oh, wow.
And I introduced myself to Mark, and told him about some of the broadcasting stuff I'd been doing. And he was like, I actually have a consultancy where, I help young announcers get their start. And yeah, he's been a mentor for me for years now, where he sort of gave me the lay of the land. He gave me some strategies of how to network with people, how to, sort of present a demo the right way, how to write a resume, how to blindly reach out to people to build my network and just say, hey, I am Jon Mozes. I've been doing games at the University of New Haven. I'm interested in pursuing a career in broadcasting. Would love a chance for me to send you some of my material and talk to you on the phone for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I can ask you on your path. And then, on that call or toward the end, you ask for who are some people is there anybody else that I can talk to that you wouldn't mind putting me in touch with, that I can continue to network with and grow through them. So you have to be able to take constructive criticism. You have to network, and you have to do as many games as possible, because you're not going to figure out if you're any good until you've done a couple hundred games.
Definitely. It's funny you mentioned that. I was going to ask, like, who your mentors are, so are you still close with him, to this day?
Yeah. I still send him stuff on a regular basis, and, ask for his feedback, any notes that he sees.
Even after like all your experience that you've had, and, all the accomplishments that you've done, you're still looking for feedback, on, your broadcasts.
Well, of course. I mean, what I think, to this day, there are broadcasters who are working for CBS or high level stuff at ESPN or Fox Sports, that still get feedback on their work. And, it may not be from a direct mentor, right? Like at a certain point, maybe you grow out of somebody that you were a mentee of at 21 years old.
Yeah.
But, there are people that do this for a living professionally. There are agencies that only represent broadcasters or have a specialty in it. And, they have talent coaches who will, accept your materials and then go through it and then discuss it with you about ways they can get better. I mean, you ask any broadcaster and they'll say, I'm not perfect.
Of course.
None of us are.
Of course.
There's always a way to be better. There's always something else that the audience wants that you can do better than you did last year.
Of course. What's something you think you can work on, with your own broadcasts now that you mentioned that?
I think when it comes to baseball, it is sort of completing stories.
Okay.
I think over the years, obviously doing baseball on radio is a little bit different than doing basketball on television, which is what I'm doing at Princeton and Rider.
Yeah.
In addition to I think I have a pretty good handle on telling you who they are, what's important about them, where the ball is on the field during action. But I think for me, a continued improvement is weaving that story through the presentation of the play-by-play and then getting it to a logical end point, and not letting the game dictate whether or not I finish the story.
Yeah.
Um, because if I start to tell you about you know Jake Cave's high school baseball experience, but I don't tell you that at the end of the story, it helped lead to him getting drafted by the Yankees in the 8th round,
Hmm.
then you sort of feel like you're missing something,
Yeah.
as a member of the audience. Um,
Yeah. So just like completing that picture.
yeah, there's multiple pieces that you have to pull from for every inning, right? Like you ideally want to show some interaction with your partner, be solid on time and score, nail the action or the highlight, make sure that you're telling a story about somebody and doing so in a way that's digestible. And I think I could probably also in a baseball perspective, probably also do a better job of discussing some of the analytics that are helping drive decisions in minor league baseball
Yeah.
now. Major league teams are not looking at batting average and slugging percentage to make a decision on whether or not a player is worthy of a promotion or is playing well at a certain level. They have data that tells you how hard the guy is hitting the ball on a regular basis, average, exit velocity, what's their swing path like, um, what is the spin rate on their fastball or curveball? Why is that important? These are
Yeah.
all things that baseball fans are, sort of getting hit with in all directions, but they don't necessarily know what it all means and how it sort of fits into the apparatus of moving players up and down and whether a player is good or not. So I think from a baseball perspective, that's still an area that I can improve.
Yeah. So I guess my last question would be, you know, broadcasters have so much to prepare for. You see, I guess the stereotypical like manila folder with like which is covered on every single side. Um, what really goes into your preparation, and do you feel at what point do you think, or I guess my question would be like, at what point are you comfortable with the preparation that you've done that you can then say, hey, I'm good enough to go into this game fully prepared?
You know, um, it's an interesting question because there are days where I never feel prepared and then feel like I call a very good game.
Okay.
Um, and then there are days where I feel like I do zero prep and it comes out really good. Um,
Okay.
so it's sort of a strange catch-22. My broadcast partner for the first 4 years in Trenton was Adam Giardino, and he put it really nicely. He said it's like studying for a 3-hour exam every night, but you don't
Oh,
know what's going to be on the test.
it's a good
You don't
analogy.
know. You essentially, as a baseball announcer, you have to prepare as if the game is going to, the game could be decided 10-0 in the third inning, and you still need to keep an audience entertained. So if you spend your time preparing, stats and left-right splits and runners in scoring position data to use during the game, all that's out the window if the game's decided in the third inning. It's the human
Yeah, you're
interest
right.
to keep an audience entertained and keep them interested.
Yeah.
So it's strange, there is definitely a point in the baseball season where I am only preparing for the other teams.
Hmm.
It's somewhere in the game 40 to 60 range where I feel like I have a pretty good handle on who the players for the Trenton Thunder are, who the coaches are, what their backstories are. I may tell a story about a guy on April 13th, but that doesn't preclude me from telling that story again on June 7th. Um,
Sure.
so, a lot of our players, for the most part, hang in for a lot of the year. The Thunder's roster changes every couple of days. So I'm sort of
Hmm.
always on my toes, with 2 or 3 new guys coming every week. But, I definitely do have a sense that at some point during the season, I am only preparing for who's on the other side, who's in the other uniform,
Yeah. Correct.
even though I'm still doing daily game notes and I'm still trying to, still doing a pregame interview to, still get stories out of our guys. Uh,
Absolutely.
a lot of the actual research and questions that I have for other broadcasters or the other coaches is about the other team more than it's about ours.
Yeah, and it makes sense because you are, around them so much. You are knowledgeable of them, and you get a feel for who they are over the course of the year.
Yeah, I'm on the bus with them.
Yeah.
I've watched the same guys play every day. 10 out of 13 days, 10 out of 12 days, or something like that. When you watch the same team every day, some of the information, some of the things become second nature. Like when we're doing the playoffs last year, I didn't even have to write in some of the season stats for Chris Gittens or Kyle Holder because they'd been there all year, and I knew who they were. I knew how they hit during the regular season. That's information that's still interesting to the audience because they want to know, how did we get to this point? You still, some of this stuff just comes second nature.
Yeah. So with, the Trenton Thunder, there's always new players coming in. Is there a favorite rehab assignment, that the Yankees have sent down to Trenton that, you thought was really cool?
Alex Rodriguez was really cool.
Yeah, sure.
2016. Well, there's actually two. And I guess I'll start with the Chase Utley story because Chase Utley was my favorite player growing up. And
really?
Still to this day, oh my God, yeah. The guy, the way he played the game, short, smooth swing, never, always poised, never said a bad word. So 2015, this would have been early August. Utley's making his way back from an injury. And, obviously things have been floating. It was the end of the Phillies dynasty, right? Ryan Howard was hurt. Jimmy Rollins had gone. Utley was sort of like a last man standing of sorts.
Okay.
And he was coming back from injury. And we got the word late morning that he was going to play that night.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have a rehab, it's like all hands on deck. It's like a pretty crazy couple hours.
Sure. Wanted somebody of that magnitude.
Yeah. I had to set up a press conference room. I was fielding calls and emails from Philadelphia media all day saying, hey, we're sending this photographer. We're sending this writer. We're sending this writer. So I had to assign seats in our press box. I had to sort of do a lot of the prep stuff. And, I was fortunate, I had some support from other people on our staff. We all took our game up a notch because there's going to be a lot of individual tickets to sell. So
yeah,
there's a lot of people coming. And by about 2:00 or so, everything was in place. Conference room was set up. And Reading's radio announcer had driven himself to the game from Reading. They were just coming from home. It's about an hour. He drove himself. Mickey Morandini, who was a coach for them that year, drove by himself. Their trainer, there was maybe 4 guys or 5 guys in the Reading clubhouse. Their trainer, Destin Hood, who was an outfielder for them, Morandini, and then maybe 1 or 2 other people were around. So 3:00, Utley just shows up. He drove himself from Philadelphia. He just walked into the front office. There was nobody at the front desk, and he just walked to the front office, starts introducing himself to Trenton Thunder front office members.
Oh wow!
Yeah, where do I go? And eventually we got him, to park in the right garage. We got him to the clubhouse. He's getting his gear unpacked, and 3:30, 4:00, 4:30. Reading's team bus hasn't shown up.
Oh wow! So he's just there.
He's just there, right? There's 3 or 4 other guys in the clubhouse with him. And turns out there's, a major car accident on the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Oh, wow.
So the bus is stuck in this traffic. They're at a dead stop for 2.5 hours or 3 hours and can't go anywhere. And about 5:00, I walked up to Mike Ventola, the Reading's radio announcer, and I was like, hey, are we going to have a pregame media availability for Chase? Is he going to be up for that? And he was like, let's go ask. So we went down, and he was like, yeah, my preference would be just to talk after I come out. And it's like, okay, cool. And then we hung out in the clubhouse and just sort of talked for half an hour. It was Chase at his locker, Destin Hood, Mickey Kozak, Mickey Morandini, Mike Ventola, and me. And we're just sort of sitting around the clubhouse, just shooting the breeze, talking about fantasy football and talking about, Roman Quinn at the time was a real prospect for the Phillies. And, Chase hadn't played with him. He didn't really know who he was, but, Morandini was telling him about him. And, I was just blown away. It was a half an hour of just hanging out with my favorite baseball player of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really actually sort of an amazing experience.
I'm sure.
Yeah, he played 2 games and it was awesome, and he was super easy to deal with, super nice. The other good rehab was 2016. This would have been around Memorial Day weekend. Same kind of deal. We got late word that Alex Rodriguez was going to rehab for us. My boss got a call from somebody in Yankees player development saying, hey, A-Rod's going to be in your lineup tonight, and the Yankees are tweeting it in 5 minutes.
Oh,
and we were all like, oh my God. And to be honest, the way I found out was on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah. I was in another section of the ballpark from when my boss got the phone call.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We didn't connect with each other before I saw the tweet. And I saw it and I ran into his office. I was like, is this real? And he's like, yeah, I just got off the phone, but we're doing it. Let's go. Press conference. Let's go. Set it up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that was another amazing day. It was a half day in the front office. We had interns out, placing pocket schedules with some of our partners and local businesses. And it's early enough in the year that our intern class hadn't been fully trained on everything that they do. And our box office manager calls them all and says, get back here as soon as possible.
Wow.
They did like an emergency 15 to 20 minute training on the ticket system. And Jared Diamond of the Wall Street Journal wrote a really great piece that day about sort of a day behind the scenes of a minor league baseball rehab, where Jared Diamond sat in the ticket office for a couple hours and just watched our interns and our ticket staff pick up the phone as people called for individual tickets,
Oh my God.
as close to third base as they could to watch Alex Rodriguez play baseball.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. And, whether it's fair to Alex or not, I had heard that he was sort of prickly when it came to media and he wasn't sort of all that interested in being there. And, it ended up being his last year with the Yankees. And I could not have had a better experience with him. He was extremely nice. I walked up to him and introduced myself when he was there. And, the Yankees had sent a public relations official down to, handle media and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just to give him a familiar face.
Sure.
He was extremely nice. He just introduced himself and I said, hey, like, you good to do, pregame like 5:30, we've got some media here from New York. Obviously our local guys will want to be in on it. And he's like, yeah, okay, no problem. I'm supposed to play 7 innings tonight, or I'm supposed to DH tonight and then play 7 innings tomorrow. Like he gave me the whole rundown, was just super nice. I was
awesome.
blown away by it. He was so easy to deal with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Didn't correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Aaron Judge also rehab in Trenton? Maybe, was it last year maybe, or 20?
We didn't have Judge on rehab. He was in AAA last year, but we had so I've been in Trenton since 2014, and the 2015 opening day Trenton Thunder is like the most prospect-packed minor league baseball team you'll ever hear of in your life.
Yeah.
Mason Williams was the leadoff man, followed by Aaron Judge, and then Greg Bird, and then Gary Sanchez, and then Eric Jagaila, and then Dante Bichette Jr. with Luis Severino pitching. And it's just like,
wow,
how does that even happen?
You literally named like, a potential Yankees lineup, or, 4 guys with it.
It's funny because I've like thought about this over the, I get this question sometime, what best team that you watched, and the 2015 team, they were really good. The problem was that everybody got promoted by July 4th.
Yeah.
So the Thunder themselves sort of, fell off a cliff and ended up finishing the year at 500. But the 2017 Trenton Thunder, they won 92 games, which tied the franchise record for most wins. And, the opening day infield was Miguel Andujar at third base, Gleyber Torres at shortstop, Tyro Estrada at second, and Mike Ford at first base, with
wow.
Kyle Higashioka behind the plate and Billy McKinney in the outfield. Like, that's another really good team.
That was our opening day roster, you said?
Yeah, that was opening day in 2017. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's so crazy. But
Yeah.
anyway, I really appreciate your time with this. It means the world to me. And I'm really looking forward to, sharing your story.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Dylan. Thank you.
Absolutely.